She gave everything to the company: late nights, flawless results, unwavering loyalty. But when the promotion came, they gave it to someone else, someone less qualified, but more comfortable looking. What they didn't know? Her husband was a billionaire with a plan, one that would turn their quiet racism into a global reckoning. You're not going to believe what happened next. Dear viewer, what you are about to witness is not just a story. It is a powerful testament to the quiet power and pursuit of justice in places most people ignore. If this is your first time here, I warmly invite you to share where you are watching in the comments below. And if stories like this move you, challenge you, or make you think, consider subscribing and clicking the bell icon. We share voices that deserve to be heard every day. Thank you for being here. Now, let's get into the story. There was something cinematic about the way the morning sun filtered through the 27th floor windows of the Revell Lux headquarters in downtown San Francisco. The city shimmered below, bustling, ambitious, alive. It was the kind of view that made people believe they had arrived. Amara Thompson had earned that view. At 38, she wasn't just a senior vice president. She was the mind behind the global rebranding of Revell's beauty division, the strategist who quadrupled their market reach in Asia, and the woman who, just last quarter, brought in the company's highest grossing product line in history. Her fingerprints were on every innovation Revell had proudly paraded in press releases over the past 5 years. And today, Amara had every reason to believe she'd be stepping into her next chapter, Chief Innovation Officer. The executive leadership had hinted, subtly and not so subtly, that this was hers. She'd done the work, paid the dues, turned doubters into believers. She sat at the far end of the polished marble conference table, tailored navy suit pressed to perfection, notes color-coded, her breath steady. Across from her sat board members, mostly white, mostly male, who all smiled just a bit too politely. Next to her, Mason Greer, the kind of man who wore confidence like cologne. Expensive, over-applied, and a little nauseating. He was also her competition. Or, more accurately, he was the one they'd hired just 18 months ago, with half her experience, 3 times her swagger, and a resume that glowed because of the connections behind it. Still, Amara wasn't worried. She had results, she had vision, and she had integrity. So when the CEO, a lean man named Hal Winthrop with a permanent smirk, stood and said, "Let's congratulate our new Chief Innovation Officer, Mason Greer," something shattered. The applause started, polite and hollow, and Amara sat frozen. Mason stood, grinning like a lottery winner, shaking hands, already thanking the room with phrases like strategic growth verticals and fresh brand energy. Amara blinked. Once. Twice. The sound in the room had gone muffled, like she was underwater. All she could hear clearly was the thump of her own pulse. She waited for someone to speak up, for someone to even glance in her direction. But they didn't. Not until Hal finally turned to her and said, "Amara, your contributions have been invaluable. Mason will lean heavily on you in this next chapter." Her mouth opened slightly. "Excuse me?" she managed. Hal smiled the way someone smiles at a waitress who just got their order wrong. "You're essential to this team. We believe Mason's leadership style is just a better cultural fit for where we're heading." Cultural fit. That was the moment the boardroom broke her. Not because she didn't get the promotion. She'd been overlooked before. Every black woman in corporate America had. But because they said it to her face, without flinching. without shame. Because cultural fit was code, and she knew it. It meant palatable, familiar, white. It meant not you. She stood slowly, every muscle trembling with restrained dignity. She didn't slam her folder shut. She didn't throw her coffee. She simply gathered her things, nodded once, and walked out. No one stopped her. In the elevator down, she stared at her reflection in the mirrored walls. Skin glowing, jaw set, tears threatening behind eyes that refused to blink. Back in her office, she sat down, closed the door, and tried to breathe. For the first time in years, she didn't feel seen. She felt invisible. All the late nights, the global calls, the missed birthdays, the speeches about equity and inclusion. What had it meant? A knock on the door. Her assistant peeked in. Ms. Thompson, HR sent over a press release draft announcing Mason's promotion. They asked for your quote of support by 3 p.m. Amara smiled tightly. Tell them I'll send it shortly. The door closed, and she broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, with a single tear down one cheek. A quiet kind of grief, not just for herself, but for every black woman who had ever been told to wait, to smile, to be patient, only to watch a man with half her brilliance walk off with the prize. Her phone buzzed. A text. Julian, thinking of you today. I love you, no matter what. She looked at his name on the screen, her husband, her peace, the man who never doubted her power, even when she did. She stared at the message for a long time before responding. Amara. They gave it to Mason. Said I'm not a fit. I'm tired, Jules. The 3 dots appeared instantly. And when Julian finally responded, the words weren't long. But they changed everything. Julian. Then we changed the game. The sun had already dipped behind the skyline by the time Amara made it home. Her heels clicked across the cool stone floors of their Belvedere waterfront estate. But for once, the house didn't feel like a reward. It felt like a contradiction, a beautiful cage where ambition had become exhaustion. She dropped her purse by the front door and leaned against the wall, pressing her palms to her eyes. The silence rang loud. Somewhere upstairs, she could hear the faint hum of jazz. Coltrane, her husband's favorite. The comfort of it tugged at her heart, but she didn't move. Not yet. Julian came downstairs barefoot, wearing soft gray joggers and a white tee, the same one he always reached for on long, thoughtful nights. His presence was quiet, calm. But the moment he saw her face, the stillness broke. Come here, he said. She didn't argue. She walked into his arms like someone stepping out of a storm. And for a long moment, neither of them said a word. He just held her. They didn't even try to hide it, she whispered against his chest. They said he was a better cultural fit. After everything. Julian's jaw flexed, but he didn't respond right away. He was careful like that, never reacting out of emotion, only out of purpose. You know what I see? He finally said, brushing a lock of hair from her cheek. I see the most brilliant woman in this city. The same woman who rebuilt a dying division into a billion-dollar brand. The same woman who turned a hobby blog into a beauty trend that made it into Vogue, with no budget, no title, and no help. And the same woman who, despite all that, still thinks she has to earn her worth in rooms that were never built for her. Amara looked up at him, tears glistening. I'm so tired, Jules. I know, baby. I know. They sat down in the sunken living room. The bay, twinkling in the distance behind the floor-to-ceiling windows. Julian poured her a glass of elderflower tonic, her favorite, and pulled up something on his laptop. "I want to show you something," he said, spinning the screen toward her. It was a spreadsheet, a massive one. Her eyes narrowed. "What's this?" "A list," he said, "of every senior executive at Revell, their tenure, promotions, demographics, roles. I hired a research team to quietly pull public data." Amara blinked. "You did this today?" "I've been doing it for a while, ever since your last review. Something felt off then, too. I just didn't want to push until you were ready." The spreadsheet revealed what she'd long suspected: patterns. Men promoted faster. Black employees clustered at the mid-levels. An almost perfect mirror of systemic bias, disguised in spreadsheets and polite language. Julian leaned forward, voice low, but firm. "We're not asking anymore. We're going to show them exactly what they are. Not from the sidelines. From the center. I've already assembled a legal team, and I'm activating a few media partners." She raised a brow. "You're launching a campaign?" "Not a campaign," he corrected. "A reckoning, but only if you're ready." Amara hesitated, not because she was afraid of a fight. She'd fought her whole life, in college, where professors mistook her silence for ignorance, in corporate meetings, where her suggestions were repeated by others louder and then applauded, in interviews, where they asked how she balanced ambition with likability. But this felt different, bigger, personal. "I don't want to be the angry black woman in their story," she murmured. Julian reached for her hand. "Then rewrite the story. Be the woman who didn't let them shrink her." She sat back, letting his words settle in her bones. This was the man who'd grown up in Detroit, who built his first tech company with nothing but a second-hand laptop and a basement office, who'd faced his own rejection letters, coded language, and corporate ceilings. He knew what it meant to be dismissed, but he also knew how to build power from that pain. And he was offering all of it to her now. "But if we go forward," she said slowly, "it's not just about me anymore." "I know," he said, "and that's exactly why we have to." They spent the next 3 hours on the couch, laptops open, notes scribbled, strategy forming. Amara's mind, once clouded with doubt, sharpened. Every slight, every overlooked win, every "not now." It all became data points, leverage, story. At midnight, Julian looked at her and smiled. "There she is." "Who?" "The woman they thought they could bury." She smirked, finally, the first real smile all day. "I was never buried," she said. "I was planting roots." Julian raised his glass. "Then it's time to rise." And so they did, not in rage, but in clarity. Not with vengeance, but with vision. Because when you pair brilliance with love, injustice doesn't stand a chance. If there was one thing Julian Vale knew how to do better than most billionaires, it was leverage silence before the storm. For the past week, while Revell Media celebrated their diverse brand identity with curated Instagram reels and corporate-sponsored panels, Julian and Amara had been quietly building a strategy that would change the conversation and shake an industry. Their dining table was now a war room. Laptops open, sticky notes on the glass walls, legal pads filled with timelines, names, emails, receipts. They weren't throwing darts in the dark. They were aiming with intention. "I want this to be more than a headline," Amara said one evening as she sifted through internal memos. "I want it to matter to everyone who's ever been passed over and gaslit into silence." Julian nodded. "It will. But first, we pull the pin. The first move, Receipts. Julian's legal team, led by Camille Torres, a sharp civil rights attorney out of D.C., compiled a compelling report. The evidence included emails that showed Amara being asked to train the man who would later be promoted over her, performance reviews with glowing feedback, but mysteriously vague promotion comments, internal diversity data showing an 87% white leadership structure, a slide from a recent hiring presentation titled Cultural Fit versus Cultural Disruption, a red flag in HR speak. Camille's voice crackled through the speaker on Zoom. This isn't just discrimination, it's a case study in institutional gaslighting. Julian leaned in. What's our strongest angle? The pattern, she replied. You're not just exposing what they did to Amara. You're showing what they've always done to people like her. When we file, it becomes public record. But I think we should go one step further. Julian's brow lifted. I'm listening. The bombshell dropped. Camille proposed something bold, a video message from Amara herself. Not a press conference, not a tweet, a direct-to-camera sit-down, something raw, something undeniable. Not a woman begging for justice, but a woman declaring her worth. At first, Amara hesitated. She wasn't afraid to speak, but she'd spent years being told not to be too much, not too passionate, not too assertive. But now, she was done shrinking. The video shoot was simple, black backdrop, a single light, Amara in a sleek navy blouse. No frills, no filters, just truth. I gave everything to my company, she began. And when it came time to recognize that work, they gave me silence. Or worse, excuses. She spoke of microaggressions, of being praised in private but passed over in public, of being told to wait her turn when others were promoted ahead of her, less experienced, less qualified, but more comfortable for the boardroom. And then she said the line that would go viral in under 12 hours. I wasn't denied because I lacked merit. I was denied because I made the ceiling uncomfortable. The video ended with the hashtag, #break the ceiling. Julian watched from the side, his eyes misting, not because of anger or sadness, but pride. Amara wasn't just reclaiming her power. She was putting the system on notice. The internet reacts. The video dropped on a Tuesday at 8 a.m. By noon, it had 1.2 million views on X, formerly Twitter, and Amara Vale was trending globally. Support came flooding in. Black professionals sharing their own promotion denial stories. Activists amplifying the message under hashtag Break the Ceiling. Even former Revell employees began to speak up anonymously. One posted, I worked there for 3 years. Watched 2 women of color train their replacements. HR told them they weren't strategic enough. This isn't new. Amara's just the first to fight back loud. Julian didn't respond publicly. He didn't need to. Because in back channels and private chats, he was activating partners, media contacts, equity investors, watchdog organizations. The infrastructure was moving, and the impact was accelerating. Revell's clumsy response. By Wednesday, Revell Media released a corporate statement. We are aware of the video circulating online. Revell has always stood for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are reviewing the claims made and take them seriously. The public saw through it instantly. We're reviewing is PR for we got caught, one commenter wrote. Within hours, journalists were reaching out for comment. When Revell declined, news outlets began publishing their own investigations. One expose from The Atlantic cited whistleblower accounts from HR. Another piece in Forbes questioned Revell's history of promoting external consultants over internal candidates, especially women of color. By Friday, the heat was unbearable. Sponsors began to distance themselves. A well-known beauty brand pulled a joint campaign, citing ethical misalignment. Stockholders demanded an emergency board meeting. Julian and Amara had done what few could. They'd turned a silent injustice into a national mirror. Amara's resolve deepens. That night, Amara stood on their balcony overlooking the Pacific. "I didn't expect this," she said softly. "Not all of it. Not the noise." Julian wrapped his arms around her from behind. "It's not noise. It's truth with a microphone." She turned to face him, eyes fierce now. "Then we're not done." He smiled. "I didn't think we were." The thing about glass ceilings, they don't just break quietly. They shatter, loud, sharp, and impossible to ignore. By the following week, Revell Media was no longer fighting a PR storm. It was drowning in it. The Break the Ceiling movement had spread beyond tech and media. Healthcare, education, finance, industries were reckoning with stories from Black and brown professionals who had been passed over, spoken over, and stepped on for years. And Amara Vale's voice was the match that lit a bonfire. Corporate earthquake. On Monday, Fast Company published a feature titled "The Faces Behind the Ceiling: 10 Executives Who Said No to Silence," with Amara front and center. By Tuesday, the New York Times ran an op-ed titled "What Happens When a Billionaire Says Enough," crediting Julian for weaponizing privilege in the service of equity. And by Wednesday morning, the dominoes began to fall at Revell. David Brenner, the VP of Strategy, and the man Amara trained who got the promotion, resigned to pursue new opportunities. 2 board members issued separate statements distancing themselves from the company's current leadership. Employees staged a walkout, calling for real change, not hashtags. But the biggest blow came when Tech Women United, a coalition of over 300,000 female professionals, cut ties with Revell Media entirely, pulling sponsorships, partnerships, and promotional contracts worth an estimated $19 million. It wasn't just about Amara anymore. It was about every woman who had ever been told to dim her light for the comfort of others. The conversation changes. In the chaos, Amara could have retreated. She could have let the headlines run their course and moved on to something safer. But she didn't. She showed up, everywhere. On Good Morning America, she spoke candidly about why the world still struggles to see Black women as leaders. On The Daily Show, she called out performative DEI programs that exist to check boxes, not change culture. And on a special edition of LinkedIn Live, she sat down with 3 other Black women executives, 2 of whom had also been passed over at Revell within the last year. One of them, Dr. Shauna Pierce, shared a story that left viewers stunned. When I asked why I wasn't selected for the VP role, I was told I wasn't the right vibe for investor relations. I have a PhD in behavioral finance and have presented to the UN. The vibe they wanted was less assertive. Translation? Less me. Viewers flooded the comments with messages of solidarity. Some shared similar stories. Others vowed to audit their own company's hiring practices. A few even resigned in protest of toxic workplaces. Amara hadn't just broken the ceiling. She was showing everyone what it looked like to walk freely on the other side. Julian's strategic checkmate. Meanwhile, Julian Vale moved like a chess master, never too loud, but always 10 steps ahead. His private equity firm, Crescent Atlas, quietly began pulling out of shared tech ventures with Revell's parent company. Then he made the move no one expected. He announced the launch of a new venture accelerator for Black women in tech, media, and entrepreneurship, backed by $120 million in seed capital. Its name? Ceiling Zero. In his press release, Julian wrote, "Talent should never be filtered through the lens of comfort or familiarity. Ceiling Zero exists to fund brilliance. No code switching required." Social media exploded. Applications surged. Young women began tagging their work online with #, Ceiling Zero, a proud declaration of unfiltered excellence. The private apology. On a rainy Thursday afternoon in San Francisco, Amara received an unexpected email. Subject: a private apology. From Rachel Whitmore, CEO, Revel Media. Dear Amara, I failed you. I failed others. I won't pretend that an apology is enough. But I am reaching out to ask if you'd meet with me. Not as a PR stunt. Not with cameras. Just two women, face to face. I need to listen. You deserve that much. Amara sat with the message for a long moment. She didn't owe Rachel a thing. Not a reply. Not forgiveness. Not time. But this wasn't just about closure. It was about accountability. And sometimes, looking someone in the eye is the most radical act of power you can offer. So she agreed. Behind closed doors. They met in a small conference room at a neutral co-working space. No reporters, no aides, just water bottles and quiet tension. Rachel arrived looking thinner, tired, humbled in a way that wasn't rehearsed. She sat down slowly. I built a company that rewarded proximity, not potential, she admitted. And I was blind to the way that harmed women like you. I'm sorry, Amara. I truly am. Amara nodded, but her voice was steady. I don't need your guilt. I need you to fix the machine. Rachel looked away, tears threatening. Tell me where to start. Amara leaned forward. Start by giving power away. Step back. Name your bias. Audit your board. Then hire. Not to check a box, but to elevate people who've been boxes for too long. It wasn't a tearful reconciliation. It wasn't designed for headlines, but it was real. And sometimes, that's where the healing begins. The sky over Oakland was a bold, blazing blue the day Amara Vale stepped onto the TED stage. No notes in her hand, no title card beside her name, just her voice, her presence, and a story the world was already leaning in to hear. My name is Amara Vale, she began, her tone calm but commanding. And for most of my life, I believed that if I worked twice as hard and spoke half as loud, I'd earn a seat at the table. A beat. I stopped believing that the day I realized the table was never built for me in the first place. A murmur of understanding swept through the audience. This wasn't just a talk. It was a reckoning wrapped in grace. She spoke of being overlooked, underestimated, and finally, unapologetic. And then she shared something new, her dream for the next generation, from promotion to purpose. After the fallout, the lawsuit, and the public apology, Amara could have disappeared from the spotlight. She could have written a memoir, taken a sabbatical, or quietly accepted one of the dozen executive offers that landed in her inbox. Instead, she and Julian built something. Vale Impact Collective, a nonprofit designed to fund and mentor BIPOC women in media, tech, and policy. Within 6 months, they had opened satellite hubs in Atlanta, Chicago, and Detroit. Within a year, they'd funded over 100 startups, media projects, and local political campaigns led by Black and brown women across the country. Justice, Amara often said, isn't just changing who gets to sit in power. It's changing what power does. And she lived it. She declined board seats with legacy firms who hadn't changed their hiring practices. She turned down honorary awards from companies still under investigation for discrimination. She poured her time, not into ego, but into education, mentoring high school girls who'd never seen someone like her lead from the front. Ripple effect. Across industries, the echo of Amara's story sparked change. At Revell Media, a new leadership structure was formed, and 3 Black women were promoted to senior roles within 12 months. The Equal Advancement Act, a proposed federal bill aiming to enforce transparency in corporate promotion data by race and gender, gained momentum in Congress. Its nickname? Amara's Law. At Harvard Business School, her TED Talk was added to the core ethics curriculum under the module titled Power, Equity, and the Unwritten Rules. But the greatest sign of progress came quietly. A letter, handwritten, neatly folded, no return address. Ms. Vale, I'm 27, a Black woman. I was offered a promotion this week and almost didn't take it because I thought I wasn't ready. Then I watched you speak. I'm taking that job, and I'm going to build a table of my own. Thank you. M. Amara carried that letter in her purse for months, not because it validated her, but because it reflected her. A mirror for the mission. A reminder that when you walk through fire with your head held high, someone else learns how to walk through it too. Full Circle 1. Crisp autumn evening, Amara and Julian stood together outside the brand new Ceiling Zero Accelerator in Oakland. The building was glass and steel and wildflowers. It hummed with energy. Young innovators, writers, dreamers, and builders moving through its halls like it was their birthright. Julian looked over, proud. You built this? She smiled. We did. He kissed her forehead. You changed the world. She looked across the street, where a mural now stretched 30 feet high. Her silhouette, arms raised, with the words, earned, not given. No, she whispered. We showed the world it can be changed. A story, still unfolding. In the end, Amara didn't need revenge. She didn't need a title or a trophy. She needed truth. She needed a world where women like her didn't have to break themselves to belong. And because she stood up, not just for herself, but for everyone made to feel invisible, that world is closer now than ever before. Her legacy wasn't just justice. It was permission to take up space, to demand better, to believe that excellence deserves equity, not just applause. And she earned every piece of it. Reflection. What Amara's story taught us about power, justice, and becoming unapologetically seen. Amara Vale's journey began like many others, quietly. A Black woman with talent, drive, and grace, she did everything right. She followed the rules, exceeded the metrics, and proved herself time and again in a world that still whispered, "You're not what leadership looks like." But when she was denied the promotion she had undeniably earned, not because she lacked the credentials, but because of the color of her skin, something inside her cracked. And in that crack, a new resolve was born. What makes Amara's story unforgettable isn't just the injustice she faced. It's what she did with it. It's how she let the pain shape her, not shatter her. How she turned exclusion into empowerment. How, with the loving partnership of her husband Julian, a billionaire unafraid to put purpose before profit, they didn't just fight back. They changed the rules entirely. They didn't burn down the table. They built a better one. And then invited everyone else who'd ever been left out to sit at it. Her story isn't just about one promotion or one company. It's about a culture that still views Black excellence as a threat instead of a gift. It's about a system that measures worth through the lens of comfort instead of courage. It's about how often power hides behind politeness and how change requires confrontation. But what Amara showed us, above all, is that legacy is a choice. She could have walked away, quietly, with grace, with dignity. But she stayed. She spoke. She built. And by doing so, she made space for thousands more to follow, not just in her industry, but in boardrooms, classrooms, studios, and neighborhoods across the country. So, what's the lesson? It's this: you don't have to apologize for wanting more. You don't have to wait to be given permission. You don't have to minimize your brilliance so others can feel safe. You don't have to play small in rooms that were never meant to contain you anyway. Amara Vale didn't change the world by being nice. She changed it by being clear, by being brave, by being relentlessly excellent and unwilling to be erased. Her story reminds us that injustice doesn't always show up in screams. Sometimes it shows up in silence, in boardrooms, in decisions made behind closed doors, with smiles and handshakes that say, "You were close, but not quite." But just because someone says no doesn't mean that's the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the beginning of your mission. How can we apply this today? If you're in leadership, ask yourself, who's getting overlooked in your organization? What brilliance are you not recognizing because it doesn't look like what you're used to? If you've ever been passed over, let this be your reminder. Their rejection doesn't define your worth. Your voice, your story, your journey matters. If you have privilege or influence, use it like Julian did, not just to protect your own, but to dismantle what's unjust. If you're building something, build it to include people who've never had a seat before. Make equity the blueprint, not the afterthought. And most importantly, amplify stories like Amara's. Because the more we tell them, the more undeniable our collective truth becomes. We all have a role in reshaping the world into one where potential is never limited by race, gender, or zip code. So whether you're Amara, Julian, or someone watching from the sidelines, the time to speak up, to stand firm, and to act boldly is now. Justice isn't something we wait for. It's together. If Amara's story moved you, if it reminded you of your own journey, or the journey of someone you love, drop a comment below. Tell us, what does justice mean to you? And if you believe more people need to hear stories like this, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share this video with someone who needs hope and fire in their soul. We're just getting started. Because when one woman rises, she carries generations with her. Let's keep rising, together.